Alright, so the lesson we're going to talk about is conditional statements. These are statements that imply certain truth values and usually are in the format of if-then. So kind of a rough outline of these statements would be if A, then B, where A is what we call the premise and B is what we call the conclusion. So for this truth value, if we said if A is true, then B is true, which would imply this whole statement is true. So depending on what the statement's talking about, it changes the truth value. So today we're going to talk about the different alterations to this statement and what the truth value of those different changes are. The example we are going to use is if a quadrilateral has 4 equal sides and angles, then it is a square. Our premise in this case would be has 4 equal sides and angles, and our conclusion would be is a square. So our first change is going to be the inverse of the statement. Now the inverse of the statement implies that you negate, which just means you put a not in front of these different sentences. Usually it works depending on the type. So you negate A and B. So for our example, if a quadrilateral does not have 4 equal sides and angles, then it is not a square. This particular truth value is true. For particular cases, this truth value does change when you take the inverse, but not for this one. Our next one is the converse of a statement. The converse is given by switching the premise and conclusion, A and B. So for our example, if a quadrilateral is a square, then it has 4 equal sides and angles. See how we switched the original conclusion with the premise and vice versa. The truth value for this particular one is also true, but once again does vary based on what conditions you use. Now for our last change, the contrapositive of a statement. The contrapositive says that you negate and switch both the premise and conclusion. For this statement, it means that if a quadrilateral is not a square, then it does not have 4 equal sides and angles. For this, the truth value would also be true. But also, with the contrapositive, it's important to note that the truth value is always the same as the truth value of the example itself. So, little rule of thumb. We use these conditional statements to define different theorems and different rules and laws in math that will help you solve certain problems and prove certain process. So it's important to be able to grasp this concept.